I prefer to date black women. I have made this claim before in previous videos, but I figured that in this video, I'm going to help you understand why I prefer dating black women. When I was a little kid, I found myself checking out white girls only. And what I mean by white girls, I'm not talking about just like white American. I'm talking about white people of Latin America too. You know, those people from Mexico, from Colombia, from Venezuela, from Puerto Rico, from Cuba, from all of Central and South American countries that look white, and then you try to talk to them and you think they're white. And then they speak Spanish and they're like, oh, I thought you were white. Oh my God, I didn't know you were Hispanic. I didn't know you were Latino. Those are people that are descendants of Europe. They're white people. They just are not born in the United States. But they're also from Europe, just like the white people of this country. But that's another story for another day. Today, we're going to stick to the script. As a kid, I caught myself checking out only white girls. And if you're wondering why, well, aside from the fact of mejorando la raza, I also have been affected, just like everybody else, by the white standard of beauty propaganda that is pushed. I guess I was just a product of white standard of beauty propaganda that is pushed through the media 24/7. Aside from that fact, people of Latin America, just in general, whether black, brown, etc., we tend to worship white presenting Eurocentric features. When I was a teenager and I was finally ready to date, my first girlfriend was a white American girl. And I dated nothing but white girls my whole teenage years. All my teenage years, since 14 all the way up till 19. And do you want to know what all these white girls had in common when I dated them? Is that when I dated them, they were all invited to our house. My mom welcomed them with open arms all the time. She loved it. She just loved me dating white girls. She hoped that I would end up with a white girl. She hoped that I would end up having children with a white girl so that my kids hopefully would come out light-skinned. However, when it was time for maybe them to invite me over, it was always a no. You can't come over. And I would ask why. And every single relationship that I had with all these white girls as a teenager, they all had the same reason. Some of them told me and some of them didn't tell me. But it was obvious what the reason was. One of them was open enough to tell me, my mom doesn't like Mexicans, so you can't come over. I was around 15 years of age or so. And I remember when she told me that, I went home and sat on my bed and I began to think really deeply. I thought about how horrible it felt to not be welcome to somebody's house, in this particular case a girlfriend, but just in general to somebody's house because of my racial identity. And believe it or not, I also began to think, right there and then, as I thought about this and how horrible it felt, I began to think about my mom telling me as a kid, when I would try to invite my little friends over to the house to come and play, she would tell me, you can go ahead and bring your friends, pero vale más que no andes invitando a esos prietos. And if you're wondering what that means is, you could go ahead and bring your friends. Just don't be inviting those dark-skinned people in here. And by the way, dark-skin didn't only mean black people. It also meant dark-skinned Mexican people like us. So imagine this. We are a household of dark-skinned Mexican people. And even in our household, dark-skinned Mexican people like ourselves were not invited. Only either white friends or the white Mexicans, white Latinos were invited over. My mom was only okay with white presenting people coming over. And I didn't understand why. But what I did understand as a 15-year-old sitting on my bed was how horrible it felt to be discriminated against. And although a horrible experience, in a way it was a blessing in disguise because it started making my wheels turn. And it caused me to put things in perspective and understand how wrong it was that my mom felt the way that she did about dark-skinned people. And if you're thinking that this is just my household, well, as I've said in other videos before, this is a very normalized thing in Latin American countries. And that, of course, is due to the caste system that we, people of Latin American countries, are a product of. Whether we realize it or not, whether we practice it or not. But by default, The caste system is implemented in us. And the only way to break this cycle is if we become conscious of it and we go out of our way to break this cycle of practicing colorism. When I was around 19 years old, I dated the first Mexican girl, but she was a white Mexican. And I invited her over to come hang out at the house, etc. But then when it was time to go pick her up, I had to pull up and park like around the corner or something because she didn't want her mom to see me. And at first I didn't understand. I said, why? Would you get in trouble if you have a boyfriend or what's going on? And at first she said something like that. But eventually one day she told me, she said, Ricardo, I don't think my mom is going to be okay with me dating you. And I said, dating me because of me or because of just dating itself? And she said, no, because of you specifically. And I said, well, they ain't never met me before. She said, I know, but you're kind of morenito, you know? My mom's not okay if I'm dating somebody that's like darker. And of course, it felt like shit to be told this. But at the same time, how can I complain that these white people of Mexico don't like dark-skinned Mexicans if my own household suffers from colorism too? How can I complain about another race of people that want nothing to do with us? Meanwhile, in my own household, we want nothing to do with us. Hell, my mom is practically only okay if I date a white girl so that I could have light-skinned kids, so that I could be the one to break the curse of being dark. So yes, it felt like shit being told this. But since we in our household, we practice colorism too, to our detriment, I can't complain that these white people practice it as well. So I had to date her and pick her up around the corner so her family doesn't see me pull up. And this went on for a while, until eventually I broke up with her. And then, just to pick up where I left off last time, then I dated the first black girl. And I was around 17 going on 18 or so. And although I plan to tell you the full story of our relationship, today I'm just going to stick to the script and just share with you the difference with dating a black girl comparing to dating white girls or white Mexicans, white Latinas, etc. When I first started to date this black girl, very, very early on, she said, hey, do you want to come over and watch a movie with us? And my ears perked up a little bit. What do you mean, with us? Who's us? With me and my family. And of course, I'm used to now welcomed to the girlfriend's house. So I said to her, you're going to invite me over? She said, yeah. Are they going to be okay with that? Yeah. Did you ask? No. So how do you know they're going to be okay with it? Because why wouldn't they? You're my boyfriend. Okay. I mean, it makes sense. So I decided to follow her to her house. And yes, I was nervous. I was scared. I didn't know how they were going to look at me. This is a whole nother race of people. Not only a race of people that wouldn't be welcome over to my house, but a race of people that I've been told to be careful with. So we walk up to the main door. She opens it. We walk in and she says, hey, auntie, hey, so-and-so. So there's a lot of people in the living room watching Friday. They were watching Friday, the movie. Everybody was sitting there in the living room. And I saw a lot of people there. Hey, Ricardo, come in, honey. Come sit down. We're watching Friday. You ever seen this movie? Like, yeah, I've seen it before. Come on. It's like, what the hell? Okay. So I walked over there. I sat. And we just watched the movie. It was just a family hanging out. And one of the girls decided to bring her Mexican boyfriend over. And it didn't take too long for me to settle in and get comfortable. And you want to know the irony of it all? Is I sat there. And my girlfriend literally sitting on the sofa, but like right here in front of me. And I held her and we just watched the movie together. You know what was going through my mind? You're not going to believe this bullshit. I was thinking, is my mom going to be okay if I bring her over? So when the movie was over, I went to the house by myself. And I went to the kitchen. I grabbed a chair and sat by the table. And my mom was cooking something. And I decided to finally have this conversation with her. And we talked about random things until finally I decided to say, hey, Mom, I want to ask you something. How would you feel if I dated a black girl? And she stopped doing what she was doing. And she turned her whole body over to look at me. And she says, why do you ask? I'm just asking. And I just put my head down. Honestly, waiting for her to say something very negative. To be honest, I just waited for her to say whatever she was going to say while my head was down like that. Why? Are you interested in a girl that's black? I look up. Maybe. And she asked, is she a good person? I mean, I barely started seeing her, but yeah, she seems like a good person. She invited me over to her house, met her family. They were really nice to me. And she stood quiet for a little bit. She said, her family was nice to you? Yeah. She went like this. She says, well, if she's nice to you, if you respect her, she respects you, you guys are good to each other, then that's all that matters. And I literally went, are you sure? She said, yeah, why? Well, Mom, my whole life as a kid, I heard pinches negros, pinches prietos all the time. It's like you guys don't like black people. She didn't say anything. She stood quiet. And I remember saying to her, what did black people ever do to us, Mom? She gave me a little stare, and she just went. And she turned around to go back to cooking. I dated this girl for 2 years of my life. And it was the longest relationship I was in. Prior to that, it was just a couple of months, a couple of weeks. But I also dated another Mexican girl. And it was the same thing. The colorism just comes into play all the time. And do you want to know what's crazy? No exaggeration, every black girl, and eventually black women, because eventually I was a man and I dated black women. Every single time that I dated a black woman, I was invited to their house. And their families, but their mothers specifically, really, really loved me. Really, really loved me. And this is an experience that I never got to experience while dating Mexican girls, Mexican women, other Latinas. I dated a Cuban before. I dated a Salvadorian before. And it was my fault because all these Latinas that I dated, they were white presenting. Okay? Just to be honest with you. Every single one of these Latin families, they practice colorism. Anti-dark skinned. The darker you are, the less they want you around, because the darker you are, the less chances that they can practice mejorar la raza, you know. But as I was getting older, now entering my 20s, I found myself dating black women only. Not because I didn't think other women of other racial identities, other ethnicities were not attractive. It had nothing to do with lack of physical attraction. As a matter of fact, I always appreciated dating Mexican women because we have something in common already by default, which is that we can relate culturally. And I love that. I absolutely love relating to the person that I'm in a relationship with culturally. I love that. But you want to know what else I loved? I love being appreciated. And as I was going into my 20s, every single time I dated a black woman, it was the same thing. Their families loved me. Their mother showed me love. And I could never find this experience when I dated a Mexican, a Latina, etc. And one of the things I always noticed when dating a black woman, even when I dated black girls, like when I was a teen, is that every single time, black girls, black women, they seem and they tend to be very conscious of colorism, very aware of racism, etc. And when I was younger, I didn't understand it. And I also didn't understand why. And eventually, as I was getting older, I began to understand. And it was for the same reason why I, as a kid, was always told, don't bring those dark-skinned people in the house. I realized that this system in America was built on anti-black ideologies. Hence, racism. And because America has such a strong history of anti-blackness, black people, whether they want to or not, have had no choice but to be conscious, be aware of their reality. And even I, as I was getting older, I began to also notice these things until eventually it led me into going out of my way to also become conscious and aware of this system and the white supremacy that it produces, the anti-blackness that it produces, the anti-Native American that it produces. And as I began to educate myself on the history of the Americas, etc., I can only be in a relationship with somebody that is aware, that is conscious. I can't take anything less than that. And it has been my individual experience that every single time that I'm in a relationship with a black woman, I get this experience. Not only do I find black women physically very attractive, I'm very attracted to black women, but it's also this. I think they call it sapiosexual. And the more I educated myself, that when it comes to our relationship, the only time that I seem to connect very, very well intellectually is with black women. So it's a combination of, I find black women to be very, very physically attractive. But more importantly, I find black women to be the most intellectual, at least to my standard of what I'm looking for, of the criteria that needs to be met for me to find myself compatible with a partner. And I'll end it with this. Not too long ago, I was looking for a therapist. But you want to know something? I didn't want just a therapist. It had to be a black woman therapist. Specifically. I know black women are not a monolith, so bear with me. But from my experience, black women, whether they want to or not, they have a great sense of awareness of what's going on systemically, historically, etc. And I mean this with all due respect. Unfortunately, my people collectively, we suffer from colorism, we suffer from internalized racism, and a lot of times it seems like we're not ready to confront it. We're not ready to fix it. We much rather deny that it exists, pretend it doesn't exist, and or brush it under the rug. And I wish this wasn't so. And no, I'm not putting down women of my ethnic background, my heritage, etc. Absolutely not. Never will. I love women of my heritage. I respect them. I do my best to uplift us. But it's very difficult to do it when I feel like as a collective, we seem to not want to combat the anti-indigeneity, the anti-blackness, the Stockholm syndrome, the desire to whiten our race. And this necessity to desire proximity to whiteness. And I don't mean to make black women seem like a monolith, I promise. So that's why it's important when I say my experience. So from my experience, every single time that I dated a black woman, I have never met a black woman that desires proximity to whiteness. I'm not saying there isn't any out there, but I've just never met any. On the contrary, they seem to be resistant. But that's part of the consciousness and the sense of awareness that they carry that I seem to appreciate and find appealing. Compared to my people who just have this necessity to desire proximity to whiteness. It's almost like we worship whiteness. And I hate to say it, but it is what it is. And I'm going to tell you straight up right now, it is impossible for a man like me to date anybody, and I mean anybody, that feels a necessity to desire proximity to whiteness, to want to mejorar la raza by whitening it, to uphold white supremacist ideologies and views. It's impossible. I can't. And that has been why I've preferred dating black women, because I can connect better with them in every level. In every level.